We are hoping that the pastor decides not to do this. We're hoping against hope that if he does, it won't be covered. As an act of patriotism.
The off-camera sound you heard there, bonne chance. Somebody saying, in French no less, good luck, a good luck wish for Secretary of State Hillary Clinton, as Ms. Clinton today got at least part of her wish. The Gainesville, Florida pastor who had threatened to burn copies of the Quran on Saturday on 9/11 did indeed call off his pay attention to me one-finger salute to the Constitution, at least for now. But that pastor has gotten a lot of attention anyway, as reporters and editors and producers try to figure out what to say about a jerk who was clearly just hoping that you will say something about him. The New York Times executive editor, Bill Keller, had asked his staff to avoid using pictures of burning Qurans. The Associated Press, which normally provides a blizzard of updates on a big kids chasing the soccer ball story like this, said it would instead deliver just a single story each day and no video or photos of Qurans on fire or even, quote, detailed text descriptions. Fox News announced it would not cover the Quran burning. No live feeds, no video, no still photos. ABC, CBS, and NBC, which is our parent network here at MSNBC, they all took a similar approach, saying at least that they would cover the Quran burning as a news event with context and perspective. The question of what exactly that means for the story of the Florida Quran-burning pastor almost became moot today when that particular extremist minister put down the matches. But then the inevitable. Wanting to get in on the publicity, a couple of Quran-burning copycats decided that they would like a turn at leading the news cycle. A minister in Tennessee said that he would burn the Quran at home, and he would post his own video of it online. Also, naturally, the infamous funeral protesting Christian cult group in Kansas, you know the ones, I love the guy on the right, they say not only have they burned a Quran in the past, they would like to now do so again. Joining us now is New York Times columnist Gail Collins, who wrote a piece today called The 5% Doctrine, in which she said, quote, it is important to remember that about 5% of our population is and always will be totally crazy. Gail, thank you for coming in.
Good to be here.
Salient difference between mentally ill and crazy in order to make this political argument?
Yeah, well, mentally ill is a problem, an illness, something that's treatable, and there's also, of course, criminals who have to be put in jail. But besides that, there is about 5%. The people for whom there are signs on the Grand Canyon saying, do not walk to the edge over the fence. The people who like to wear machine guns to public protests just to show that the Second Amendment is their thing. People who have no judgment at all about anything. And there's a ton of them out there, and you just have to remember that when you're judging what they're doing.
Well, how do you then make responsible decisions about whether or not crazy people's crazy antics count as news? Nobody's saying that this guy is actually making a good case for himself on wanting to celebrate 9/11 this way. I do think, though, that it's been covered in a way that is substantially different than other crazy people doing crazy things on this subject in the past have been covered.
Yeah, and you're right that it is scary to think that now you'll have sort of an American Idol kind of moment in which all the crazy would-be ministers are going to be competing to who gets to be the next one. But and it has been, there's a context right now. There is a political context into which this has been dumped that's all about the mosque issue in New York, which is not the same thing. There's this desire right now, and I think some people's part, to say, well, the mosque thing, both of these are bad ideas, but constitutionally protected. Build the mosque and have it. It's not the same thing at all. There's not the same thing to build a community center in a building next to a bar, which you already are praying in, but you would like to have a swimming pool and an auditorium there, which is the context of this. And let's burn the Quran to show that Islam is evil. It's not the same thing at all. But because the first one was so politicized by so many people who outrageously took this sensitive issue and started making TV commercials for their campaigns saying mosque ground zero will not stand, here I am in front of the burning buildings again, I think that set the stage for the second thing to become such a big deal.
So essentially the coverage is driven by this crazy Florida pastor guy seeming like a second beat on the same story?
Yes, exactly.
Yeah.
This is another constitutionally protected bad idea.
Right.
But it's not the same thing. It's not the same thing at all. And I've also not noticed the same people who were making their campaign commercials standing in front of the burning World Trade Center saying, never, never, never on my watch. I'm not seeing them come out and say burning the Koran is a terrible idea in their campaign commercials. It just does not seem to come up the second time.
It doesn't have exactly the same resonance. I mean, I made the case in the opening segment in which I yelled, and I'm sorry, but I feel a little emotional about it, that the reason that this is getting driven the way it is, and sort of why this kook guy without a congregation who otherwise would be very happily ignored by everybody involved in the creation of news in this country, the reason that it has become news is because it is sort of tapping into this idea that there is a war on Islam. There at least is a war of Islam on America, and that's being pushed by relatively respectable political figures. There doesn't seem to be anybody who's been pushing that line, though, answering for the crazier side of it.
Yes, I think that's a good point. And, you know, this whole thing, I've always wondered from the beginning, there's fire laws about burning things in bonfires in Gainesville, apparently. And my impression was that the fire department was not going to let this happen anyway. So we were doing this thing for no reason whatsoever except that it balances off the other thing about New York, which was such a bad idea. It's not our finest hour as a country, actually, right now. But I do think if you keep the 5% rule in mind, perhaps next time it'll work out better.
Do you think that when, you know, the defense secretary called this pastor, when Secretary Clinton spoke out about it, when the president spoke out about it, should they have demurred? Should they have not spoken out about it so as not to elevate this guy?
You know, it's a good question. They're probably sitting there asking themselves that question. Now, certainly once they did that, you couldn't, as a news organization, say, I am going to ignore the crazy guy that the president's calling up tomorrow, whatever. Yeah. You know, it's not, doesn't work at that point. We'll see.
Gail Collins, columnist for the New York Times, and always a very welcome guest here. Thank you for coming in. Nice to see you.